Nobody asked for this. A common refrain used on social media whenever literally anything is announced. I remember the first time I saw it, though, when Bob Iger announced that a Cassian Andor prequel series was in development for the then upcoming Disney Plus streaming service. I remember comments up and down that Instagram post about who asked for this, who needs this series. We want an Obi-Wan Kenobi project starring Ewan McGregor instead of this garbage. And now, I can't help but chuckle at that last one. I was excited. I've loved Rogue One since the first time I saw it. Outside of the original trilogy, it's my favorite of the Star Wars films. And, maybe surprisingly, Cassian was always my favorite character from that movie. Over the next 4 years, I watched Star Wars consume itself from the inside. Yes, there was the fabulous Siege of Mandalore arc in the final season of the Clone Wars. Yes, there were 2 stellar seasons of The Mandalorian, which, momentarily, reunited the entire fanbase. But there was also The Rise of Skywalker. There was also The Book of Boba Fett. There was also Obi-Wan Kenobi. I unfortunately greatly dislike all 3 of those productions. And with those 3 releasing so close to each other, not even Baby Yoda could stop a great number of casuals from tapping out of the franchise. In September 2022, Andor finally released on Disney+. It was the 3rd series released that year, following Boba Fett and Kenobi. 2 shows that everyone, myself included, screamed about wanting for years. Unsurprisingly, when Andor debuted with its first 3-episode-long arc, it was watched by a fraction of the viewers who had tuned in to the Star Wars series which preceded it. But then, the show grew in popularity, and triple the number of people watched the finale that watched those first 3 episodes. Why? Because Andor is not just a great Star Wars show. It's a great show. And it reminds us of why we fell in love with Star Wars in the first place. Spoilers will follow. We're all overly familiar with the original Star Wars, so I'll save the ramble on how it's even improved by Andor for another video. But in rewatching that film last week, following the series finale and a rewatch of Rogue One, I was able to fully appreciate how George Lucas established his universe to us back in 1977. In just the first shot of the film, we understand everything we need to know about the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Empire. Later, when Ben Kenobi is explaining the Force to not just Luke Skywalker, but the audience as well, he does it in a very simple way.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
And that is all we need to know. Star Wars didn't bog us down with lore. It told us what we needed to know and let the story speak for itself. When you strip it down to that basic level, Andor is the exact same way. Star Wars works best as political allegory. All 6 of the George Lucas era films are reflections of the politics of the time, yet are also timeless. In the original trilogy, Lucas envisioned the story being about the Vietnam War, with the rebels as the underdog resistance, the Viet Cong, and the Empire as the unstoppable forces of the United States. For the prequel trilogy, particularly the latter 2 films, Lucas based Palpatine on Vice President Dick Cheney and Anakin's fall on President George W. Bush. To say Star Wars is not political is to misunderstand Star Wars. Andor is the most political Star Wars since the George Lucas era. Its themes of fascism and how it can spread and grow until it's choking you so slowly you don't even notice, to quote Luthen, eclipse the non-existent themes of real politics in the previous Star Wars projects from Disney. It's crazy to think that the 2nd season of Andor was written 4 years ago. The reason why Andor feels so current in its themes of immigration, propaganda, and infighting within a faction is not because it's a reflection of the modern climate, but because these are themes echoed across human history. This leads me to the Imperial Security Bureau, the ISB. Emphasis on the word bureau. Andor creates, for the first time since Star Wars released in 1977, a sense of fear with the Empire. The depiction of the Empire here evokes the depiction of the Imperial boardroom from the Death Star in the original Star Wars. Unlike other Star Wars series and films, where we see the Empire and the subsequent First Order destroying planets and hunting Jedi, the Empire in Andor is instead depicted as boring rooms where the fascists plot how to subjugate the galaxy next. Whenever we do see stormtroopers in the series, they conjure an instant sense of dread, notably in the episodes Rick's Road and Who Are You? Andor feels so real because this is how fascism works in the real world. In one of the opening scenes of Season 2, we see Director Krennic holding a secret meeting with Imperial officers. Tony Gilroy, the creative mind behind Andor, has spoken about how this scene took direct inspiration from the Wannsee Conference, where the Nazis planned the final solution. Similarly, the Gorman Front in the second season takes heavy inspiration from the French resistance of World War II. The Gorman Front is a perfect example of another way Andor rises above the rest of Star Wars. We see them as a group who didn't start their fight until it was too late to stop the Empire. And now they need to rush to war, and the gore gets sloppy, most notably in Episode 6 of Season 2, when Sam brings a blaster to the heist when he was explicitly told not to by Vel, and the end result is the death of Cinta. The depiction of the rebels throughout the series is incredibly realistic. In Andor, the different rebel factions, whether they be the Gorman Front, the Maya Pei Brigade, Saw Gerrera's partisans, or the main rebellion in Yavin, are constantly doing things to hinder their own cause. You do, of course, have the idealistic rebels like Nemec, but they're juxtaposed against the extremists of Saw Gerrera's group. Cassian spends the entire first 2 episodes of Season 2 on a planet, which we later learn to be Yavin 4, being detained by the dumbest rebels ever. By the time we reach the series finale, Alliance leadership is immediately dismissive of anything related to Luthen, even though they are all aware of how he's the one who coordinated the extraction of Mon Mothma from the Imperial Senate following her speech protesting Emperor Palpatine and his genocide of Gorman. We won't see the entire Rebel Alliance come together until Rogue One. One of Andor's great themes is that everyone has their own rebellion. Though the disparate rebel factions may be doing things that unknowingly hurt the other groups, they're all fighting in the way that they feel is right. This becomes exceedingly prevalent when we look at our own titular character of Cassian Andor. Andor goes from being a thief in the first episode, to being a mercenary on Aldhani, to being a prisoner in the Imperial complex on Narkina 5, to, at the end of the season, telling Luthen to either kill him or take him into his rebellion. By the time we reach the Gorman Massacre, 1 year before the events of Rogue One, Andor is ready to leave the rebellion. The 3 events which convince him to stay are the atrocities of the Gorman Massacre, his conversation with Clea, where he tells her he's ready to make his own decisions, and she reminds him that that's what they're all fighting for. And then, of course, Bix's leaving Yavin and her farewell message to Cassian. In the series finale, Cassian is defending Luthen to rebel leadership. He is an entirely different man here than he was when he stole the Imperial Starpath unit before the events of the first episode of the series. The Cassian that we follow from the beginning of the series through the heist on Aldhani died in that prison on Narkina 5 and is reborn a new man, a man his mother would have been proud of, as he says in a moment mirroring his final line of dialogue in Rogue One, when he tells Jyn Erso that her father would have been proud of her. While Cassian is not the same as the altruistic Jedi Luke Skywalker, the smuggler turned rebel Han Solo, or the bounty hunter with a heart of gold Din Djarin, he represents something arguably more important in the galaxy as a whole. He is the average rebel fighter. He is the everyman. In the series finale, we see Cassian as a dead man walking as he moves through the base on Yavin. We see Mon Mothma having breakfast, not in her cozy quarters in the Masasi Temple, but with her cousin, Vel, in the camp with the rest of the troops. In watching this scene for the first time, I was struck by the notion that every rebel here had their own rebellion. They could have all had stories just as, if not more, compelling and heartbreaking and beautiful than that of Cassian Andor. He is the perfect, most realistic depiction of a rebel. You hear some people on the internet criticize Andor's lack of lightsabers, the Force, Jedi, Sith, and Starfighter dogfights. But what Andor provides in its subtext is a story that understands on a basic and fundamental level what made Star Wars a timeless classic 48 years ago. Andor is a great story on its own, but the fact that Andor is Star Wars makes it into a beautiful story. It is the best that Star Wars has ever been. And I don't need all Star Wars to be political spy thrillers, but I need all Star Wars to have the thought, love, and care put into it that Tony Gilroy, a self-professed non-Star Wars fan, put into this beautiful show that nobody asked for.